Chris Lang, a superstar in the industry of sports writing. We talk Major League Baseball, we talk NFL, we talk some golf, and we talk some NHL. It's Chris Lang, Sports Buffet Podcast, expert on sports as we break it all down with Chris.
Talking to Chris Lang is we just talked general sports with one of the best sports writers in the state of Virginia, works for the News and Advance, covers Liberty Flames. We talked about the Liberty Flames in a prior podcast. You can check it out about growing pains with having a new quarterback in Josh Woodrum. I kind of compare the situation in Charlottesville to, is UVA going to have growing pains now with Phillip Sims, or did Michael Rocco get the hook too early as Sims is going to start against Duke? What's your take on that?
Yeah, the amount of interceptions that Mike Rocco threw, I think ultimately is what killed him out there. That's, it just looked at the stats. I didn't get to watch last week's game because it really wasn't on TV down here, I don't think. So, I just know that his numbers in the first half were fantastic, but then when it came down to it, under pressure, he had to throw passes, and he threw too many picks. And their receivers up there this year have not been good either. They've been dropping way too many balls. So you can't say that they didn't give Rocco a fair shot. That team needs to spark their games. The season's in danger of slipping away from them entirely. Not going to a bowl game this year would be a disaster for Mike London because of the momentum he built last year. So I think he felt like he had to do something, and Phil Sims has shown enough to give it a shot. So I definitely think Mike got a fair shake. He got 4 or 5 games and just didn't do enough to hold on to the job.
You know, when I've seen Sims play, it's in mop-up time, which is not necessarily a fair judgment, but some of his passes just are not good passes. They're short. I mean, I know he's got the legs, which in today's football age, if you can run, that's almost just as important as if you can pass. With that being said, do you think he gives him a much better shot to win than Rocco?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. I think a lot of that depends on the receivers. Like I said, I've watched a couple of UVA games, and it seems like Dominique Terrell's dropping the pass every time I look up. It's all sort of put right in his hands. So, they got to help him out a little bit. The running game's got to help him out. Sims is, if this isn't the case, then turn into an unproven freshman. Though I think that they really need to see what they've got. I mean, this is a guy that's a state record holder in Virginia in total offense. I think they want to take a look and see what they can get, because they do have to. They have something to play for here. They have to salvage the season with 3 losses already, and tough games coming up on the schedule. They understand that just to get to 6 wins and get to that bowl eligibility is a huge deal. You can't keep forward momentum by going to a bowl game and missing, and going and missing.
Right.
So,
do you think Phillip Sims has the keys to the car now and Michael Rocco doesn't get him back, though? I mean, because, if you go to Sims and find out he can't do it, and then you put Rocco back in, I mean, have you really gone forward with anything in the way I kind of look at it?
Yeah, Rocco's a veteran, though, and I think that he's a guy that will handle that sort of thing a little bit better than I don't see him sulking.
Right.
I just don't. I've known him for a number of years, covered him for a couple of years at LPA, and he seems like the sort of guy that doesn't get really, really down on himself. I think he's going to be supportive of the thing and fight his butt off to get another chance, but I certainly don't think he's going to root against Phillip Sims. It's a tough situation. If he does struggle, I think London is going to have to feel comfortable about going back to Rocco, and I'm sure they've had those discussions. But I don't think he makes this decision lightly either. I think that there's stuff that goes on in practice that we don't know about that I'm sure comes into play. So it just seems like the time was right.
What type of problems do you see with the ACC team in Southwest Virginia?
Well, the slow starts has been the thing that's been talked about the most. I think that a lot of this stuff on Anton Exum was a little overblown. He got burned a few times after penalties against Cincinnati, but he plays in a position where it's high profile if it gets that boundary corner position. You're going to get thrown at, you're going to get hit with passes, and sometimes you get beat, sometimes you win. That's just the nature of that position. But offensively, it just seems like, I don't know, Logan Thomas's mechanics just look a little bit off. I can't tell what it is. It probably has something to do with his footwork. I think that a lot of passes are high, and Nathan wrote in today's newspaper. They got to find a way to get Marcus Davis a little bit more involved. The kid's a physical specimen, and he needs to be a bigger focal part of the offense.
obviously, I don't think you make a change from Logan Thomas or anything like that, even though I believe I heard that on one of the message boards he was called the, quote, worst quarterback in the ACC right now. But, I mean, at the same time, too, I don't know if people really understood at the beginning of the season how big of a loss David Wilson was when you have just unprovenness in the offensive backfield. I mean, does that just add to these problems?
Yeah, and you lost your top two receivers. They're both guys in the NFL. Danny Cole's an NFL pick, and you just the message board society of just wanting to yank a guy and make a change. As people say that the backup quarterback is always the most popular guy on the team. So you get him in there and realize why he's backup. Logan Thomas is not. You don't go from being a potential top 10 draft pick to being the quote-unquote worst quarterback in the ACC in 5 games. I don't get that. You've got to give. There's no patience anymore in sports. You've got to give guys time to work through things. And as bad as things seem after a 3-2 start, a loss to Cincinnati's not a bad football team. And Pittsburgh, I think, is going to get better and better as the year goes along. They're under a new coaching staff for like the 17th time in the last 5 years. So it's going to happen. But Virginia Tech still has a Coastal Division title to play for, a trip to the ACC championship. I know that the Tech fan base seems to be bored with that at this point. They want to be Alabama and LSU, and it's difficult to be that team. There's a reason why not an LSU or but I think there are a lot of people that would love to have a lot of fans in the ACC would love to have Virginia Tech's problems of ho-hum 10-win seasons and trips to the Orange Bowl.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree with you. Chris Lang always bringing the humor to the sports buffet as well. Let's hit on to another subject, which is Major League Baseball. And hey, you get to watch playoff baseball, and it actually means a little something now with the Baltimore Orioles against the wild card against the Texas Rangers. Granted, it might not be a one and done for you, but hey, I think getting to the playoffs for the Orioles has to be considered a win.
Being relevant in June is considered a win. But hey, Buck Showalter is. They've been very good, or not very good, but at least very competitive ever since Buck Showalter took over the season a couple of years ago. And he's a guy that wants you. He just has a way about him of sort of. It looks like abrasiveness from afar, but he's a player's manager. Guys really like playing for him. They believe in what he sells, and you can tell that with this team this year. I think one of the really interesting stats with the Orioles is while everybody expected them to fade at the end of the year, their last 3-game losing streak was sometime in early August or late July. I think it was late July. So, and that's how you make the playoffs in a league where 6 teams won 90 games. I mean, that's mind blowing that Tampa Bay won 90 games in this playoffs. So, it's a heck of a run. I'm hoping it obviously continues tonight. We'll see.
Do you think it does?
Yeah, I think it's just crazy enough to say it does, because you look at the pitching matchup. Buck's going to throw Joe Saunders out there, who's like 0-7 with a 9-something ERA all time at the ballpark in Arlington, and it just sounds crazy enough that it might work. For whatever reason, everything he's done this year worked. He's turned Chris Davis, who was a continual bust in Texas, to a 33, 34 home run guy. Yeah, he's got ridiculous seasons out of people like Nate McLeod and Lou Ford, Steven Pierce. It makes no sense. Texas, in theory, if you're putting bets on the game, should be a 3 or 4 run favorite tonight. But I don't know if you mess with the Orioles' magic at this point.
Yeah, and I was going to say the Rangers have probably hit themselves out too against the Orioles, because that's when Hamilton hit 4 jacks this year.
Yep, he hit 4 jacks, and they've had some big offensive games against Baltimore that they I think it scored 12 and 14 and 10 against them. They've only played 7 times though, and it's been a while since they've seen each other. It was mid-August when they last played in Arlington. So it's going to be interesting tonight. Yu Darvish is not unbeatable, and their bullpen, that there's nothing like they were going to see in Tampa Bay, which is why, as an Orioles fan, I was so adamant of Tampa being out of this race by the time that series started, because their bullpen scares the bejesus out of me, especially Fernando Rodney. I'm not sure it's the relief pitcher in baseball.
Does Buck get manager of the year, though, in the AL? That's, I think, a big question.
In any other year, it'd be an absolute shoe-in, but Dan, Bob Melvin certainly deserves a little bit of
on to another topic real quick, the NHL. I know you're one of the, I believe, 5 fans that still exist. How can they keep having fans, though? Because I've only been out of high school since '97, and I think this is like the third work stoppage.
So this is the second one, I believe.
Okay, it seems like more.
Yeah, it does. Well, and the problem is, the more you read about it, or I've been reading about it, is that the salary floor and the salary cap all rose too much. And the problem was when they signed the last deal, they gave the players way too much of the cut, which was like 57%, which is killing the small market teams, because they're having to pay. It makes sense to say the players should get the most money, but you got to understand of the amount of people that are in an organization that you have to pay: trainers, GMs, assistant GMs, minor league coaches, scouts, etc. All team workers all the way down. That's where the teams like Florida Panthers, Phoenix Coyotes are really struggling to get by financially. It's not that they can't afford players. It's going to be tough for the players to want to give a concession, though, when they've been locked out by the owners. So I don't know what they're going to do. You know, the salary floor, while a great theory, has led to some really just stupid contracts for really bad players, because you have to have, you know, the Panthers, for instance, or the Columbus Blue Jackets have to have enough money invested in their team to meet that salary floor. So you start giving fourth line guys, you know, second line contracts, and it's ridiculous. So it seems like there's some sort of tweaking that has to be done with that to make it work. And I understand you don't want to have a situation where the Panthers just decide, you know what, we're not very good, we can't compete against the, I'd say, big money teams. There's, you know, the Capitals are the only big money team in their division, but it's just for example. I won't take the Blue Jackets, for example, because they're in there with Detroit, St. Louis, and Chicago in their division. Yeah, they say, well, we can't compete, so we're just going to pay, we're going to have a payroll of $12 million and throw a bunch of minor league guys out there. That's not good for the game either.
Go ahead.
There's going to be a middle ground somewhere.
We'll try to find that, but I don't know. I mean, when do you see this ending in terms of a stoppage?
Well, the NHL people I follow on Twitter are not very optimistic right now, and one of them, Elliot Friedman, up at who works for one of the Canadian newspapers or TV stations. I can't remember which one, but he's an authority on it, so I trust him. He's saying today that November 15th might be the best case scenario at this point. If it starts dragging on longer than that, we may be looking at a lost season. That just would be, that'd be just ridiculous. It'd be just the dumbest decision ever made, because the hockey has just made its inroads back. It's exciting again. Fans are watching. People are talking about hockey. And for them to lock out and lose an entire year over this would just be the height of stupidity. And I'm wondering, too, how much the NBC Sports Network gets involved with this, because they paid a decent amount of money for a TV package, to where it's the anchor of that NBC Sports Network that's on cable. They have nothing else on there, and things are like below Lifetime Movie Network right now, because they have no live programming other than Major League Soccer, which you want to talk about. There's only 5 NHL fans, but I'd like to challenge you to find 2 Major League Soccer fans in Lynchburg. So,
I'd challenge you to find 2 in Virginia, but if you want to keep it to the city, no way will I take that bet, Chris Lang. Do I look like that much of a fool? As we move on to another topic real quick before we get you out of here, 2 last topics. Is RG3 setting the bar in Washington too high so far?
Well, it depends on the delusion level of Redskins fan. I tend to be realistic Redskins fan. In fact, before the game against Tampa Bay last week, I was just saying, look, the Skins their defense is banged up. It's not terrible, they're just hurt, and they're going to win 5 games. But I'm going to enjoy watching RG3 play this year. And you know, then they go off and win that game last week, and he makes that great last minute comeback to get Billy Cundiff in range for him to thankfully not miss another field goal. But I don't know. I just hope that the realistic level, they don't start playing division teams until like week 7 for some reason. It's a weird schedule where they, you know, we'll see where the delusion level goes this week. If they find a way to beat Atlanta at home, then I think the delusion level will go way back up to thinking of Super Bowl aspirations, which is just ridiculous. The Redskins fans should be just happy to enjoy watching this guy develop and get better. He's going to make mistakes, but Mike Shanahan is certainly not going to take him out of a position to make mistakes. He needs to make those mistakes to learn and get better. So,
general topic. The Ryder Cup was last week. Let's start with A, which could impact questions B and C. Do you care?
I do care.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
I was sitting with some people and kept flipping back and forth for the Ryder Cup, and they were wondering what I was watching. So.
Well, then B and C do apply now. A, how bad of a... I mean, did the Americans lose it, or did the Europeans win it?
Well, it's certainly a mix of both, but the Americans had opportunities at the end there, and they're just putts that it was painful to watch Jim Furyk at the end. Just having watched Jim Furyk during the U.S. Open this year and during some other events where he just let things slip away from him, it was you just had a feeling he wasn't going to make that putt. And for all the people that say, well, the Americans don't care about this and whatnot, I don't know if you watch Jim Furyk sitting on his knees for a good 90 seconds after missing that putt, just his head in his hands. He was just devastated because that's his last chance in a Ryder Cup to do that. He's not going to get back on the team again. And then Steve Stricker had an opportunity. It was weird. It seemed like nobody on the American team was talking to the people behind them about 18 because every one of them hit that shot long and to the point where there was just no chance of making a putt on that hole. So I don't know what was going on there. But at the same time, Europeans were pretty good. You know, Ian Poulter was fantastic, especially as they Roy McIlroy somehow got to the course. I'm not buying that. I don't know what time zone thing it is either. That's ridiculous. He's there for a week.
Yeah, he plays enough American events to know the time zones. I think I'm sure he's got one watch at least set to American time zones. But you know, 17 and 18 were just an absolute nightmare for the Americans. But I'll tell you, I think I saw some stat on ESPN Research or something like that on Twitter, which is a great thing to follow. And it said something like, I want to say it was Sergio and Luke Donald or something like in team play when they're playing together. I mean, they're like something 0-1. So, I mean, you know, I think the Europeans, I mean, obviously they won it on the last day, but I mean, you know, it kind of seems like lately they're built more for the Ryder Cup than we are, and I don't know why.
Well, they've got a lot of guys. Ian Poulter's a perfect example of a guy that rises to the occasion in that team play, but can't do anything in a major.
Right.
He's never a threat to win anything out there. But at the same time, he's just and that's what I love about the Ryder Cup is it's such a different sort of environment. It's like a football game put on a golf course because fans boo bad shots and whatnot. You're not playing for yourself, and that's what's so hard for these guys are hardwired to be playing for paychecks and playing for position and playing to post a number. And there are just certain times where you sit there in a team situation or in a match play setting, you go, well, actually, you know what? My best play is to hit just a ridiculously little safe shot so I can make par because I know the other guy's going to make both. And it's just hard to get, and you play the other way for 40 weeks a year, and then it turns around like that. So some guys are just better at that. I know Poulter's one of those guys. Sergio probably fits into that mold as well because he's really struggled to have success in the majors.
Last thing, and correct me if I'm wrong because I was watching too, I just cannot remember off the top of my head. That thing could have come down to where Tiger and Molinari could have been playing for the Ryder Cup, correct?
Correct, yeah. If Stricker would have found a way to make that putt, or if Furyk would have made his putt, I think would have happened. It would have turned into that situation there.
A, how much would you have trusted Tiger in that situation? And B, if Tiger wins that match and wins the Ryder Cup, how much does he kind of redeem himself? Because I don't think he's all the way back yet in terms of everything.
Well, I don't think he's ever going to be all the way back, but that's a whole another discussion for another day. Anybody that expects the old, quote-unquote, old Tiger who dominated to ever come back, it's not going to happen. He's too broken down. I mean, he could still be a good golfer, but he's not going to be. He's never going to reach that level because that level was so far above anything we've ever seen in competitive golf that it would be silly to ask him to reach that level. But to answer your question, I don't know if I would have trusted him. Ryder Cup and match play has never been a real strength of his. I don't think he's really. I'd have to look back at the World Match Play and see what his best finish is there. But I don't ever remember.
He won one.
Did he win one? Okay.
He's won one, and I mean, when he was playing in those U.S. amateurs, I mean, I want to say he was
That's
down
true.
like 4 one time. But I mean, from the U.S. amateurs to now, that's quite a few years, and we'll argue this later with maybe some other people too who are some golf fans. But I think if Tiger can get back just to 50% of what he was, that's still so much better than what a lot of people are. Where he's.
Oh, I think he's back to 50%. He may be back to 70% of what he was, but I think that's the ceiling.
I don't think he's there mentally.
Right. Well, yeah, and he's still tinkering too much with his game. He doesn't trust his stuff. I mean, we talk about that all the time with baseball pitchers. That sometimes you just have to go out and trust your stuff, and just throw the ball, hit your spot, and try to win. And he just doesn't really trust his swing. He doesn't trust his equipment. He's always tinkering and messing around with things. So curious to see what he does in the off season, because I'm sure he's sick of hearing about all this stuff.
Well, and I think a lot of people for a long time thought that he was going to get Jack's record, but I think now that's in some serious doubt.
Well, yeah, because he's 36, 37 now.
Yeah, so I mean he's a few away.
He's 4 away.
Yeah,
so the course has been set up well for him. I don't know if St. Andrews is back in the open rotation at any time. That's a perfect course for him. You would have thought Pebble Beach would have been good for him because he plays well there. Obviously, the Masters, he's almost always going to be in play because he can't hit the. There are times where he doesn't hit the ball well, but he's still in contention just because he just knows that course so well and he's so good at it. That would be the most likely scenario, is that he finds a way to get his game together and win the Masters and gets jump started. That's going to have to be the one that does it for him. That's just his course.
Well, we'll argue this very soon, but I'm going to close by saying I think if he can get it back somewhat mentally, the physical part will take care of itself. Because I think when Tiger was Tiger mentally, I think he was almost as dangerous as Jordan, and I think Jordan's probably one of the best mental confidence people ever to play sports since I've been alive.
Yeah, well, then you've also got a whole generation of golfers that are coming up now that haven't experienced being on course with the mentally intimidating Tiger, so they don't get fazed by it. So
Right.
That's another interesting kind of caveat to that.
Always fun, Chris. We will do it again soon, and thanks for joining us.
All right, sounds good, Bob. Thanks.